Thank you, Naomi, and all those who are involved in pulling this great series together. I really enjoyed studying with all of you last year. Some new faces, so maybe before you speak up, just let me know your name. And the real reason why I picked this topic is because I want to know the answer. So you guys are going to have to tell me. What do you think? Does God want us to be happy or holy?
Yes.
Both. Everyone says yes. What's the question? It's a false dichotomy, Rabbi. There's a third choice. I didn't give you the option of both, guys. Okay, so here's how I like to do the Beit Midrash, because in my years studying as a rabbi, I studied in yeshiva, and we learn in a Beit Midrash. And so basically what happens is every morning, the rabbi gives out sources, and we break off into study partners and study the sources for a couple hours. Sometimes it's pretty clear what the rabbi is getting at, and sometimes it's like, why this random source and that, and wondering where. And then at the end of usually about 3 hours of fighting it out with your chavrusa, and you can't hear yourself talk because everyone in the room is screaming. And I mean literally screaming. In high school, our Rosh Yeshiva, the head of the yeshiva, would love bringing new people who had never been in a yeshiva before. He would say, okay, now I'm going to show you our library. And he would open the door, and you're slammed by the voices of 70 teenagers screaming at each other, right? That's our library. So what we're going to do first is, I think Naomi gave out, if anyone doesn't have, you can come and grab a source sheet. And so we'll break up into groups. You can learn with one other person or a bigger group and just go through the sources. And this might shed a little bit of light on why it's even a question to begin with. Does God want us to be happy or holy? Okay, so we'll pick up in a few minutes after we've looked at the sources and discussed our thoughts with each other. Now that we read a little bit of the sources, any additional thoughts, comments, questions? Sharon, I'm going to pick on you. Watch out. Yeah.
I have a question. The end of the first one, where it says, the Torah has admonished us against immorality and forbidden foods, but permitted sexual intercourse between man and his wife and the eating of certain meat and wine. If so, a man of desire could consider this to be a permission to be passionately addicted to intercourse and among wine bibers, among gluttonous eaters of flesh, and speak freely all profanities.
Everyone talks that way, right?
I don't, but I'm just saying. This prohibition has not been expressly mentioned in the Torah, and thus he will be a sorted person within the permissible realms of the Torah.
Mm-hmm.
I laughed when I read that.
Mm-hmm.
Because I think it's ridiculous that somebody could think that way.
Sure. Any other thoughts, questions? Yeah.
Why is it gender specific only for men?
Okay. Howard, you and I will talk about this later.
Just curious.
Good question. Yeah. It doesn't feel like mitzvah is necessarily joyful. Maybe it feels like an obligation. Carol, right? Carol? Yeah.
It's not a mitzvah, it's an obligation, or at least in my mind it is. Mitzvah is something you want to do, but it's not an obligation to do it.
That's literally the definition of a mitzvah, is my understanding. It's a commandment.
Mitzvah means command. But on the other hand, it doesn't feel like a mitzvah if it's not something that you want to do. This is all part of the question, by the way. Happy or holy?
But could it not be implying that if you perform mitzvahs, you will be joyful?
Is it possible that if you do the mitzvot that you'll be happy, that you'll be joyful? Maybe, but how? How is it that I will have all sorts of obligations and burdens and commands, and that will be happy?
You want to please God.
Maybe a mitzvah comes from a desire to please God. Okay, so this is the beginning of our conversation. In the first source there by Nachmanides, here we go. So Nachmanides is addressing the verse that says, Kedoshim tiyu, thou shalt be holy. Again, this is how everyone speaks today, right? So you should be holy. Ki kadosh ani Hashem Elokechem, says God, because I, God, am holy. You should be holy because I'm holy. I mean, that sounds like a non sequitur. What does that have to do with me? God is holy. Very nice. So all the commentaries come to address, what is this verse? What is this mitzvah to be holy? What does it look like to be holy? What do you guys say? What does it mean to be holy? Follow the laws. And what does that make me if I follow the laws? What is holy? Yeah.
But, okay, so my understanding is that sort of historically, for God to say, I am holy, was a distinction from some of the other gods.
It's a distinction.
That we decided was not that holy and maybe we would follow God who didn't like those things.
Very good. The word kadosh actually means to be designated or to be separate. Okay? So that's a more literal translation. I saw some other hands. Yeah.
Yes, you want to emulate the characteristics of God.
Emulate the characteristics of God. Thank you for plugging my class, which is on the first Sunday of every month here at the JCC, 3 p.m., where we learn how to emulate the character traits of God. I was waiting for that. Appreciate it. Okay, so the Or HaChaim, who we're actually going to quote from later, a little bit of a more spiritual, slightly Kabbalistic commentary on the Torah, he says a beautiful idea. He says, the mitzvah of Kedoshim tiyu, the positive command to be holy, is giving a positive element to all of the don'ts in the Torah. All the things that you're not supposed to do, the Torah says don't do, this is a positive command to be holy. So oftentimes when we think about restraining ourselves, it feels restrictive, we feel trapped, and there's actually another way of looking at it totally, which is this is something which brings me closer, makes me bigger, makes me greater, right? So when you think about it, when you reframe it in that way, instead of thinking about, I didn't cut 3 people off on my way here this morning, and that's so restrictive, because I had to stay in my lane, I could think about how I'm showing respect to another human being. So all the don'ts, huh?
What if that caught on?
I can tell you what would happen, and it's where I used to live, so we'll... Yeah, I wasn't going to say names or anything, but anyways. So it's a beautiful approach from the Or HaChaim. Ramban, Nachmanides says, Kedoshim tiyu, don't be, in his words, don't be a menuval b'reshus haTorah. This is what Lynn was reading a few minutes ago. Don't be a disgusting human being within the parameters of the Torah. A person can technically check all the boxes. I kept all the mitzvot. I did everything that it says in the Torah and miss the boat. And be a terrible person that overindulges in every physical pleasure. So it sounds like Nachmanides is teaching us the verse of Kedoshim tiyu, be holy, is restraint. You have to hold yourself back. You have to not indulge in physical pleasure. So that's where really, to me, the question becomes, okay, so does God want me to be happy? Or does he want me to be holy? You're telling me I can't let myself have a good time? I can't indulge? I have to be beyond the 613 which are written in the Torah. If that's not enough, I have to understand the nuances and the points. So that holiness feels restrictive. That holiness feels like, no, I can't be happy. What's that?
Thou shalt not.
Right. So what do you guys say now? Now that we have read this source from Ramban, from Nachmanides, who seems to be telling us that we have to practice restraint, does God want us to be happy or does he want us to be holy?
Yes.
Yes, still yes. You are living on a different level than me, that's for sure. Yeah.
Maybe I'm getting caught up in semantics, but I think of happiness as very fleeting, whereas I don't see it here anywhere. I see joy, but I don't see happy anywhere on this page.
Excellent. So there's going to be a difference between happiness, like that feeling that I get when I go to visit Disneyland, and joy, which is something real, which is something lasting, which is maybe a state of being. And the difference between those two, maybe we can just say that Nachmanides is saying, don't overindulge in the happiness. Sorry guys, Disneyland only once a year, but maybe you can experience real joy. Yeah.
So are we defining the word happy as a temporary sense of pleasure?
Yes, that was the suggestion from Heidi.
Yeah.
Yes, Heidi was suggesting that there's a difference between happiness, which is fleeting, and joy, which is lasting. Right? What's that?
French joie de vivre.
You'll have to translate for me. Joy of living. Okay. Okay, we basically covered this already. Now, here's the interesting thing. I want to explore with you a few sources that seem to have inherent contradiction. Okay, the first is fairly straightforward. The second, I'm going to need you to bear with me. The first is every month, the Shabbat before the beginning of the new month, there is a prayer called Birkat HaChodesh, where we bless the upcoming month. And it's a long prayer asking God that this should be a beautiful month of blessing and happiness, etc. And two of the things that we ask for in this blessing is we ask for Osher v'Kavod, which means wealth and honor. Okay, so wealth, we can debate whether it's a blessing, is it a burden, right? There's what to talk about, but it's easy to see why we might ask God for wealth. Although in contrast to what we just learned from Nachmanides, who seems to be telling us that we're supposed to restrain ourselves, why am I asking for wealth? The second one, though, is really troubling. Kavod, we're asking for honor. Doesn't that fly in the face of our first and greatest leader, Moses, who's told, the praise about Moses was he was Anav Mikol Adam, he was the most humble man to ever live. We preach humility. So why are we asking God for respect? Why is that part of our tefillah? Why is that part of our prayer? Okay, source number 2. In Chovos Levavos, which was the book we were learning before we just started the new series on Sunday, in the gate of trust for God. So at the end of chapter 4 in the gate of trust, he discusses there are 2 fundamental states for human life and human existence. And it sounds simplistic, but it's actually very deep. Simple and deep are not opposites. He says that either a person is alone, or a person is with family, friends, etc. Either a person is living an existence where they're single, they don't have anyone dependent on them, they're not dependent on anyone else, or a person lives with family or with friends, has connections. And so he goes through the various benefits, actually, of both stages, because both stages have their challenges. And so he goes through the benefits of each one of these positions. If a person ends up finding themselves alone, it's great opportunity for self-reflection, for connecting to God. And there are other benefits for that type of lifestyle. And then the family. So he discusses how a person is supposed to approach being part of a family and having people who are dependent on them or they're dependent on. And he says a very interesting thing. He says, if a person, the intent, why did I get married? Because I want somebody to take care of me. I want someone to make good food for me. And why did I have kids? Because I want them, when they get older, to show me respect. For those, it looks like we have a fair number of people in the room who can attest that that's not a good plan if that's what you're looking for when you have kids, okay? But I want to have respect. I want my kids to take care of me when I get older. And I'm looking for more things. I want them to praise me. I want them to join the family business, right? So Chovos Levavos, the duties of the heart, it teaches us that if that's your intent, you will get none of it. You won't get respect. You won't get appreciation. They won't take care of you. They're not going to want to have much to do with you. But if your intent is for the right reasons, if you went into it because you want to give, you went into marriage, you went into having children because you want to give, because you want to do a mitzvah for Hashem, then here's what's interesting. He says, then you're going to get the respect, and you're going to get the appreciation, and they're going to do nice things for you. It's just like in the story with Solomon. God appears to Solomon in a dream, it teaches us. And he asks him any one thing. As he's becoming king, you can have any one thing. Does anybody know what he asked for? Wisdom. He asked for wisdom, right? It was, I believe, 13 years old. Let me tell you, that's not what I would have asked for at 13 years old. He asked for wisdom. So God tells him, because you asked for wisdom, you're also going to get the things you didn't ask for. You're going to be wealthy. You're going to be respected. Your monarchy is going to last. So here's the question. If lishma, doing things for the right reason, I want to be a giver, I want to do things for God, I want to give back for God, I want to do the mitzvah. If that's supposed to be my intent, doesn't that mean that I become a person who doesn't care about respect? I become a person who doesn't look for appreciation from others, look for them to give back to me. So why is Duties of the Heart, one second, why is Duties of the Heart telling us that the reward for doing it for the right reason is you're going to get all the things that you would have wanted if you were doing it for the wrong reason? Seems strange. Why are we asking, before a month begins, for wealth and honor? Why is that part of our prayer? Yeah.
How are you defining honor in this context?
Okay. I'm going to be very rabbinic. Forgive me. How would you define honor?
How dare you? I understand it in a modern context. To me, honor is the acts of acting honorable, and some of the ways that that might be done are acting well towards others. I would also say, in a Jewish sense, living the mitzvot.
Mm-hmm. So a personal sense of honor. A personal sense of honor, a personal code. Right. So that is a beautiful concept, but my understanding of the Hebrew word kavod is when I give honor or respect to you, or you give honor or respect to me. Right? It's the expression of something towards someone else. Right? In English, I think that's a very idealistic form of honor, is the personal code that I live with, that I live with honor. Okay, so this is the question. We're gonna sit with that question for a few minutes. Now, if you notice in the handouts we have here, the third source, the bottom source, the Talmud, in Masechet Shabbat, in Tractate Shabbos, it tells us that the Shekhinah, God's divine presence, only rests mitoch simcha shel mitzvah, from the joy of a mitzvah. So it's clear that joy is an integral part of the journey of being holy, because we're saying that a person will not be visited by the divine presence from a place of sadness, or a place of laziness, or a place of laughter, or any of these other things, but only from the joy of mitzvah. In fact, this is why we are taught on Shabbos, on Shabbat, we are not supposed to be sad. We're not supposed to study things that will make us sad. Now, it's very difficult to control our emotions, but in every way that we're able to, we should behave and set ourselves up for being happy, right? Because Shabbat is the day where the Shekhinah, where God's divine presence comes and visits us and rests with us. And there are easy ways that you can do this. One of my rabbis, before I got married, he said, listen, if you discover early on that every time you have chicken, you and your wife fight over the drumstick, so what you do is you have a conversation before you have chicken, right? So you can plan for Shabbos to make sure that you're set for success, so that you're going to be happy.
That's not how that works. They always win.
We can also have a private conversation later. Okay, now here's another fascinating thing. Okay, Orchot Tzadikim. This is one of my wife's favorite books, and she required that I bring it back if I was going to steal it from her today, because she has a study partner this afternoon. Orchot Tzadikim. We don't know who wrote it. It was written. The author did not publicize who they were, and yet it was accepted by basically the entire Jewish people at the time. And it's basically the ways of the tzaddik, the ways of the righteous. And so he goes through many various aspects of character traits, character development, etc. And he has a gate called the gate of simcha, the gate of joy. So listen to this. He says, there was a wise man who pointed out, everyone needs to have some sort of a safeguard for their good deeds. There has to be something to keep me in line and in check when I don't feel like it, when I'm feeling lazy or I'm feeling frustrated, that will keep me on the straight and narrow and keep me doing what I'm supposed to do. So what is that guardrail? The guardrail is trust. Trust in God. If you trust that everything that comes your way, there is a plan, it was orchestrated for you, and it's actually for your best, if you have that trust, then you won't get thrown off by the things that happen to you in your life. What's the guardrail for trust? How do I keep that trust in God when bad things happen to me and I think that I don't deserve them? So he says the answer to that is faith, is emunah, is belief in God. Okay, well, what protects my faith? And the mental health professionals in the room can probably attest to this better than I, but when someone hits a real depression, one of the first things to go is religion. So the answer, he says, the guardrail for our faith in God is joy, is happiness. In other words, what we're saying here is, so that I act properly, I have to have trust in God. So that I have trust in God, I have to have faith in God. So that I can keep my faith in the tough times, I have to keep my sense of joy. So it's becoming clear that simcha, joy, we saw from the Talmud, it is the highest level that we're aspiring towards, but it's more than that. We're finding out that it actually is a requirement. If I want to continue acting at all times in a good way, and I want to keep my trust, and I want to keep my faith in God, the only way I can do that is if I maintain a sense, a core of joy. And if the joy is gone, the faith is gone, the trust is gone, the good deeds are gone, everything else falls from there. Now, here's a very, very interesting point, and I think that it should be addressed and mentioned when we talk about joy as almost a spiritual obligation, it seems like, right? Obligation and joy don't seem to go hand in hand. So we know that the third of our forefathers was Jacob. His name, when he was born, his parents named him, anyone know the Hebrew? Yaakov. Yaakov, Jacob. What is Yaakov? Heel. Akev. It means the heel. He fights with a man. Our sages teach us it was an angel, and he fights all night, and he's victorious, and he's given a new name. What's his new name? Israel. Israel. Now, what's interesting about this is when Avram, his name is changed to Avraham, to Abraham, and Sarai, her name is changed to Sarah, we are told they will never be referred to their old name again. Something about their very identity has changed so fundamentally. They are not that person anymore, they're someone new. They now have the letter of God incorporated in their name. Jacob is given a new name, Yaakov, the heel, and the Torah goes back and forth. Sometimes it calls him Jacob, sometimes it calls him Israel. It's a very strange thing. Why does his name seem to go back and forth? If he changed and he achieved this new aspect of being Israel, so then that's what he should be referred to. It's interesting, at the very end of his life, he's referred to again as Jacob, not as Yisrael, as Israel. So the Orach Chaim here comes to discuss why is it that the Torah vacillates back and forth between the name Jacob and the name Israel, which, by the way, that's the name for our nation. We are either the Bnei Yisrael, the children of Israel, or sometimes we're referred to as the children of Jacob. So as a nation, we also seem to vacillate between these two names. it says at the end of his life that Jacob lived in the land of Egypt for 17 years, and then this is the prequel to when he blesses his children, and then he is going to pass away. So at the end of his life, at the very end, he's referred back to the name that he was given at birth. What's the back and forth? It says the Orach Chaim, we have to understand the meaning of the two names. So Yaakov, Akev, we said means heel, but there's another letter there. It's Akev, which means heel in Hebrew, with a letter Yud at the beginning. The letter Yud is one of the letters in God's name. The 4-letter name and also the 2-letter name, it's Yud. When Jacob was born, his soul encapsulates the idea that even when a Jew feels like the heel, when a Jew is being trampled on, a Jew has fallen to the lowest of the lows in spirituality, there's always a connection with the Yud. There's always the connection with God, no matter what. At that point, in our connection with God, it was unconditional. Yaakov, Jacob, Yud and Akev, Yud and the heel. No matter how you ups and downs, how far down you go, you're connected with God. Yisrael was an even higher level. Yisrael was a level where Jacob essentially accessed living in the level of spirituality that most of us can only somewhat tap into on Shabbat. He had the neshama yisera, the extra soul that our sages teach us comes and we're connected with on Shabbat. Okay, so that makes sense now. For us as a people, the Jewish people, sometimes we have our highs, sometimes we have our lows, sometimes we're very proud of ourselves, sometimes maybe not as much. So sometimes the Jewish people can be referred to as Jacob or as Israel, because when we're at that low but still connected to God, we're Jacob. And when we're at the high, we're Israel. But what about Jacob himself? He achieved that level in such a way that his very name was changed. It was who he was. So why is it flipping back and forth? And says the Orach Chaim, you know what the answer is? Because even Jacob was a human being. And even he could not maintain the feeling of joy at all times. The only way that we can live on the highest level of spirituality is from a place of joy. And so Jacob, unlike his grandfather, whose name changed and stayed changed, his name was not a name that any human being could live always. He lost his son. His son was taken from him for years. He's now entering, he knows this is going to be his deathbed. There were points in his life where even Jacob was not full of joy. But what we see from this and what we learn from this is that somehow the highest levels of spirituality and the feeling of joy and happiness are connected. And we saw from the Orchos Tzadikim talking about the guardrails. You have the guardrail for your mitzvah is your trust in God. Your guardrail for your trust is your faith. Your guardrail for your faith is happiness. So this is clearly not just a luxury. It's something that God very, very much wants us to have. He wants us to be full of joy. He wants us to be living in that way. Okay, so what does that have to do with the second source that we saw here? I brought one short verse when Isaac is about to give the blessing to Esav. Or so he thought, until Jacob sneaks in there and steals the blessings, right? So he sends him to prepare a dish for him, as I like, and bring it to me to eat so that I can give you my innermost blessings before I die. What's all this about? Why is he sending his son to go make him a meal? Why is that an integral part of him being able to give him a blessing? You'll find a similar thing in a different way. We know King David was a musician. And you'll find by King David, before his prophecy, he incorporated music. Isaac here wanted to enjoy good food so that he would feel a sense of joy and a sense of happiness, and then the divine presence would rest on him and his blessing would be from a place of divinity. Now here's what's fascinating though, because until now many people have suggested that we should learn how being holy makes me happy and makes me full of joy. But here Isaac wants a good meal. David wants to play on his harp. And through those physical actions and emotional actions, they then have the divine presence and prophecy. How does that fit with the bigger picture of joy? And back to Nachmanides, who taught us that we're supposed to act with restraint. We're supposed to reel back a little bit on how much we indulge. Okay, so we have a great, delicious, yummy-looking picture here for the question. And here's the answer. Okay, here's where we get to the answer. And for anybody who's interested, this is a book that I highly recommend. It's fully in English, What the Angel Taught You, by Rabbi Noach Weinberg. And so the first essay that he has in there is on the concept of pleasure. And he suggests that there are 5 basic levels of pleasure. For those who read the slide, you cheated because I let you. But what would you say are the things that we enjoy? What are the things that bring us pleasure? Food? What else? Family, love. Art. Sure. Enjoying the aesthetics. Physicality. What else? Travel. Enjoying the sights. Sleep. Do you enjoy sleeping or you enjoy how you feel afterwards?
Meaningful work.
Meaning. Meaning through work. Through accomplishment. Doing something meaningful. Other people. So love. Back to that. First level of pleasure is physical. Eating, sleeping, maybe even enjoying art. The second level is love, experiencing connection with another person. The third is meaning. And we're going in ascending order, right? So the lowest level of pleasure is physical. It's gone pretty quickly, right? You enjoy yourself in the moment. Maybe if it was really, really good burger, you enjoy the memory of it for a few minutes afterwards. But you know what comes to mind, having lived in California, is, you know what everyone says the second they get off the ride at Six Flags or Universal or whatever it is? Let's do it again. What's next? What's the next ride? Right? Maybe. Wow, that was good. Okay, what's next? Right? Physical is very fleeting. It's the lowest level. Love, a relationship, a connection, meaning, doing something that you find meaningful, that you're proud of, that you think is important.
Just to clarify, this is not intercourse. That's level 1, correct?
Depends.
We'll have a conversation after.
Yeah.
Got it.
Level 4, creativity. Doing something creative, which art, if I'm the one who's producing the art, it's an act of creation. It's an act of creativity. And level 5 is what he refers to as awe of the Creator. Now let me explain this. What this means is taking any of the 4 levels that came before it and understanding and appreciating that God created this, that God put this in my life, and that this is my connection to God. And that is the highest level of pleasure. And so that 5th level of pleasure can actually go back and elevate the first level, the physical, into a level 5. If I sit there before I eat the delicious chili and I think to myself, wow, God created this and provided it for me. He loves me so much. This is a connection to Him. And the intricacies of the flavors and all of that, and you get into it. There was a Rabbi Victor Miller. His students would say he would sit there for like 5 minutes before eating an apple every day and just praise, oh my God, how you created the hard outer shell so that bugs couldn't get into it, and the soft, delicious fruit, and the color, and the texture, and for 5 minutes, right? That man's eating was a level 5 pleasure. That's an awe of the Creator. And the same is true with love, with my relationships. If I do something meaningful. So ultimately what we're actually saying is that yes, Nachmanides tells us, Kedoshim tiyu, be holy. Don't engage in physicality for the sake of the physical. You know, I'll ask you something. Imagine at my age, if what I did, I lived in my parents' basement. They don't have one because they live in California, but I lived in my parents' basement and I played Legos all day long because that was what I loved when I was probably 9, 10 years old. And that's what I did all day long. Did I do anything wrong? Am I hurting anyone? Raise your hand if you'd be proud of your kid in their 40s, let's say, sitting and playing Lego all day in your basement. No hands? So what's wrong? What's the problem? No progress? The problem is, we, as parents, we want our kids to experience the greatest pleasures there are in life, to have real happiness. And to do that, you can't sit and play Lego all day. You have to go out, make connections, experience love, have meaning, be creative. And so the same is true with God. We asked back in the beginning, why does Duty is of the Heart promise us that if you engage with your family, I get married, I have children, with intent that I want to be a giver? He promises us, God says, I'm going to also give you that which you didn't ask for. I'm going to give you the honor that you didn't ask for. I'm going to give you the respect you didn't ask for. I'm going to give you the wealth you didn't ask for. Doesn't being holy mean I don't care about these things? No, the answer is God wants us to enjoy all 5 levels of pleasure. Absolutely. And all forms of happiness. But if that's the only thing you care about, you're like that adult sitting and playing Lego all day. And I'm not here to bash those guys making the huge creations for Legoland, okay? But that's what it's like. If a person only focuses on the physical pleasure, only focuses on the wealth, only focuses on the respect that they want from other people, they're missing out on what there is to really experience and enjoy in life. And so yes, we should engage and indulge in all forms of pleasure, if it's a level 5 pleasure, right? But if it's physical pleasure for its own sake, that's something that Nachmanides is coming to caution us against. So yes, you guys got me at the very beginning. Does God want us to be happy or holy? He wants both. But I think we'll walk away with a little bit of a deeper understanding of what that means. Number 1, joy and happiness in life, it's not only something God wants from us, it's something that's necessary in our spiritual life. It's something that's necessary in our relationship and our ability to do the mitzvot, to do the positive acts that God wants us to do. And number 2 is that, yes, we have to restrain ourselves from indulging in physicality for its own sake, because God wants us to experience something even better. He wants us to experience the greatest pleasures that are out there. And we can elevate any of the lower pleasures to higher. It just depends on why we're engaging and how we're engaging. Okay, so any questions, thoughts, comments? All right. Everyone have a wonderful, happy day.